Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Axel, for the kind invitation. I'm really delighted to be here. This is my talk, and I'd like to start by saying how grateful I am to my co-authors. This is essentially what you're going to see is a paper that was published last year in the summer. Okay. Right, so I'm going to go through a series of maps showing age estimates of European and Southwest Asian early hominin sites. And we start, of course, with the Manisi at about 1.8 billion years. And there's also something from the Sea of Azov, which may be around that time. The lithics look okay, it's just lithics. Convincing, the age is less so. Maybe it's okay. And then there's a gap. And we move into, there's the site of Ubediyya and Kotsabas in present-day Turkey, and then Piro Nord in Italy. And then, of course, we have the oldest human remains in Europe at the site of Atapuerca in Cima del Elefante. So at about, well, this is a cosmogenic dating, which would say about 1.2. And in the Ortha Basin, there's Fuente Nueva 3 and Barranco León, which, again, different types of dates, ESR and cosmogenic, and of course biostratigraphy and magnetostratigraphy, about 1.4 on average. And then there's another gap, and between 900 and 800 we have a number of sites in the Near East and also in Southern Europe, but also we have the site of Haysborough in Norfolk, and that's supposed to be either 25 marine isotope stage 25 or 21. Okay. Now, a little bit of context about what's happening in terms of the climate variability, glacial interglacial Milankovitch type of variability. We all know that the early Pleistocene is the so-called 41,000-year world, and it's because it's dominated by glacial interglacial cycles that last about 41,000 years. And then you go through a transition where the glacial cycles lengthen and intensify. From about 1.2 to about 650, and then you enter the 100,000-year world with really strong glaciations and strong interglacials that last about 100,000 years. One of the points is that those cycles in the early Pleistocene, the maximum ice volume expansion from deconvolving benthic isotopic records is thought to be about 1/3 to 1/2 of the last glacial maximum. The last glacial maximum being about 120 or 130. So you reckon about 60 meters to 40 meters sea level equivalent. So the idea, of course, is that during this period, what you have is pretty mild glacials, relatively longer interglacials. These are relatively nice conditions that probably allowed migration and also occupation through time. So indeed, there's the so-called sink and source demographic model that Robin Dennell and co-workers have put together with the idea that you have these areas in southern Europe that represent during the glacials refugial areas, and from there provide the source populations to colonize northern Europe. That was one of the ideas. So that suggests that early hominin occupation in southern Europe was permanent. But there is another view that contests the first view, that occupation was restricted to interglacials, and that implies that southern Europe was repeatedly colonized from somewhere else, probably from Southwest Asia, as this thing seems to suggest. So that's very much Robin Dennell's view and co-workers, that we're dealing with a discontinuous occupation. So what do the records from the occupation sites in where we have human remains. I forgot to say that in Barranco León there's also a deciduous molar that's been found along with lithics, with tools, which are also found in Fuente Nueva. And this is the pollen record from the sites. What we have is really spot samples of individual archaeological layers. It's not a continuous record. There isn't a huge amount of information other than can say that, well, you know, there's thermophytes and there's xerophytes and there is Mediterranean sclerophylls, and all points to a mosaic of landscapes around the sites. I mean, could be interglacials, could be glacials. We really don't know. There's no age control on this to say, you know, to put them within individual climate cycles. Same story at Atapuerca, and this is, you know, within Atapuerca, which is about 1,080 meters up in the Burgos. You have the Cima del Elefante, and you have the Galleria near the top. And here you have the pollen records that have been done for those first two places, sites, the Grandolina and Galleria. And you also have reconstructions you have from reptiles and mammals and amphibians. And there isn't, in that publication, there wasn't something on pollen from Cima del Elefante, but there was a later publication, which again, it's sort of spot samples, and you can see that there are the sporadic occurrences of some deciduous oak and some evergreen oak, and you know, again, the suggestion is a mosaic of different landscapes and wetlands around it. Not really particularly detailed in terms of the context. Where are we in those cycles? But despite all this, of course, there's a very strong statement been made by the people at Atapuerca, not everyone, that what you have is you have the stable environments for 1 million years that allowed this cultural evolution to go on as different species appearing there. Well, okay, maybe. Oh, I should also say the reptiles and the amphibians, actually, there's some fantastic work by Hugues Blaine that's been done. And that the reconstructions suggest temperatures, mean annual temperatures about a little bit warmer than today, but a lot wetter, much more higher annual precipitation. So we decided that, well, maybe we should look at that interval of time and see what the environmental context is from somewhere near. And that's the Portuguese margin. And the Portuguese margin has emerged in recent years as a prime location to do land-sea correlations. And here is the site of U1385 that we'll be talking about, this IODP site. And here's a slide that was made by Belen Matrat. And so this is looking towards the east. And here's southwestern Portugal, Lisbon over here. And the reason for this being such a good place to undertake joint marine terrestrial analysis is that you have a narrow continental shelf and you have large river systems, for example, the Tagus, that delivers terrestrial material, including pollen, that goes straight down into the abyssal plain. And then you have a series of cores in topographic highs. You core the top of the high so that you don't have turbidite problems. And it's amazing cores. Initially, there's a series of Marion Different cores that Nick Shackleton had worked, and then there's the IUDP that's sort of been continued under David Hodel. I think, I should say this is very much the vision of Nick Shackleton's, who for many, many years was interested in land-sea correlations, and he was always trying to find a place where you can do this kind of analysis. And the idea then, what we tried to do is by going back and follow this work and this look at two time windows, one in the 41,000 year world, interglacial marine isotope stage 43 and 42. So it's just a typical pure 41,000 year cycle. And then one more in the beginning of the mid-Pleistocene transition, which is marine isotope stage 35, the interglacial, 34, the glacial. Okay, and speaking of the idea of what in that on the Portuguese margin, the idea is that you do all these paleoceanographic indicators, but you can also look at pollen that's coming down. It's deposited from the same samples, and also look at sediment composition, for example, the relative abundance of detrital versus biogenic material. Right, now, I need to explain this, and bear with me for just a couple of minutes, because it's important for the interpretation later on. So this goes back to that paper. This is a landmark paper where when we look at the benthic delta 18, so this is from surface dwelling foraminifera, the planktic delta 18 in green, and behind it is what you see in gray is the North Grip ice core from Greenland. So you can see that they map perfectly the planktic delta 18 onto Greenland, and the idea is that where you see that you have this abrupt shifts at the stadial to interstadial, at the cold to warm transitions, and also at the warm to cold transitions. And so what Nick thought of that in 2000, he said that he thought that the polar front migrated fast as probably the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation weakened. AMOC, Mike. The interesting thing is then what the benthic delta 18 in red does. So this is in the same sequence, the same samples as the planktic delta 18, and then as of magic, it maps onto the deuterium record from the Antarctic ice core, and it matches in terms of amplitude, but also in terms of the phasing relative to Greenland and relative to the planktic. And what this says, we know this asynchronous phasing between Greenland and Antarctica has been one of the interpretations is that it reflects changes in interhemispheric heat transport, the so-called bipolar seesaw. When the North Atlantic gets cold, then some of the heat remains in the southern hemisphere, and slowly the Southern Ocean warms up and Antarctica warms up. So that's why it's not abrupt. It's slowly because of it's a large volume of water. And then when the North Atlantic starts warming again, then Antarctica starts cooling. So you see that in the benthic, and the explanation why is the benthic looking like Antarctica is that this is hydrographic effect. So it is probably some southern sourced, let's say Antarctic bottom water, if we can call it that becomes and reaches into shallow depths near the Portuguese margin. So if you like, what we have here between the phasing of the planktic and the benthic is a fingerprint of this bipolar seesaw. And then, in addition, there's the pollen in orange done on the same samples again, and shows the changes in the vegetation adjacent southwestern Portugal. It's an integrated signal, but it shows it follows the Greenland again, but with more nuance. So this, following each Heinrich event, there's a kind of a step change. Okay. So now let's go to the first time window, that of 43, marine isotope stage 43 and then 42. And what I'm going to plot here, and I'll follow this in the next few slides, you have the benthic delta 18, the planktic, sea surface temperature reconstructions based on alkanones. And then there's the XRF, which shows these increases, suggest increases in detrital material. Decreases means more biogenic material. And what we see is that at the beginning of the interglacial here, you have sea level. This is a broad proxy of sea level slowly rising. Ice sheets are melting. The temperature increases quite fast and stays for about 20,000 years. And then also at the same time, you have the pollen suggests that you have an increase in temperate trees and also heathland. And then you move on to the glacial, and the glacial shows an increase in ice volume, a drop in temperature, but a small drop in temperature. Sort of this is around 13 degrees SST, sea surface temperature, 13 degrees Celsius. There's one that goes down to 10 degrees. And the pollen as well shows a decrease in temperate trees, and then you have an increase in the semi-desert communities. Okay, then move to the next window, and we start with interglacial MIS 35. And again, so at the bottom, there's an increase in sea level, and then sea level remains pretty stable for a long time. It's a long interglacial, 40,000 years long. It goes through 2 precession cycles. The SSD sea surface temperatures are high, they're about 20 degrees, and the pollen, we see 2 phases of expansions of trees following the summer insolation maxima, precession minima, here and here, and in between you have expansions of heathland when you have perihelion in December, so you have sort of less evaporation. And after that, it gets really interesting, because you have 4 stadial interstadial oscillations. You can see them in the temperature going up and down, and you can see them in terms of the fingerprint of the bipolar sea. So this is like marine isotope stage 3, like the last glacial. You see this asynchronous phasing between the benthic and the planctic. During the stadials, the tritral material increases. Herbaceous vegetation increases. The forest is basically the trees, the decline overall. And then at the end of this, all this climate instability culminates into what we call the terminal stadial. And the terminal stadial meaning this is the melting of the ice sheets before the ensuing weak interglacial. Okay? So this is about 4,000 years long, and there's a massive drop of about 7 degrees from here to there, down to 5.6 degrees Celsius. Okay, today is about 20 degrees, all right? Just picture this. So when we saw that, John Grimald in Barcelona did that, and we said, there's something wrong with your reconstruction. There's no way. He said, no, it's correct. No, I think we think you should do it again. So he did it again, came up with the same number. Then I said, no, it can't be. Maybe there's something wrong with your samples. So he asked for fresh samples from the Bremen repository. He got them, came up with the same number. So what's going on? How does this fit what we know from the middle late Pleistocene? And essentially, it's the same order of cooling that we find. There's these extreme events in stage 10, stage 8, and stage 6, which represent the advection of meltwater that's coming down from Fleuve Manche, this sort of river in France that's receiving meltwater from ice sheets from the continent, and it's advected down. But there's no Fleuve Manche at that time. In the early Pleistocene. But let me just put this in context. This is the results of a model that was done by Clark et al. And this produced in a paper by Heather Stoll. And what it shows is that this disturbs the AMOC during the last deglaciation, and we have this pronounced negative salinities on the eastern border of the North Atlantic that goes all the way down to the Portuguese margin. And this is meltwater that's coming from the European ice sheets mainly. And in that paper, what they showed also for the last deglaciation, but even more pronounced for the penultimate deglaciation, termination 2. So you have this isotopic record from that speleotherms in northern Iberia, and you see this jump towards more negative values, and they consider this to be a source effect, this meltwater. Okay, so something is happening that is almost making the polar front to turn southwards towards the Portuguese margin, okay, to explain this cooling that we think also probably happened this when ice sheets were melting at somewhere in Europe. Now, if we look a little bit beyond that, so we know from the records, the benthic delta 18 record, that marine ice top stage 22 was the first big glaciation. It's the so-called 900K event. I think we'll hear more about this later. But if you look at the benthic isotope record from the Eastern Equatorial Pacific, this is site ODP 677, an iconic site. There is already a move towards lower, not lower, but heavier values of delta 18 in stage 34, although this is not seen in the elder field deconvolution of the benthic delta 18 record. In the subantarctic, there's a massive cooling around that time. In the North Atlantic, we have a lot of detrital material coming stage 34 in the Bay of Biscay here, and also in site 1308. And of course, U1385 in the Portuguese margin, we already seen that. And the delta C13 of benthic foraminifera of Cibicidoides, what we is a broad indicator, not always, of the strength of the overturning circulation, suggests a weakening. This is site 607 here, and also 1385. It shows a decrease in delta C13, suggesting something's going on with the ocean circulation. And then finally, this is the record from Ohrid here in the Balkans. And what we see is what plotted here is the percentages of herbaceous taxa. And there's a step change in stage 34. And you have sort of much larger and more extensive expansions of that, suggesting increased aridity. Something's going on in stage 34. And there is evidence from glacial geological evidence suggests that what you have is in the early Pleistocene, you have a sort of the ice was mostly in the east, in the current Barents Sea, Svalbard Sea, but slowly after 1.5, you start having more ice towards the west in Scandinavia. And so you start seeing evidence in the Norwegian Channel. There's a Fedja Til in the Norwegian Channel suggesting the ice for the first time crossed onto the North Sea. And you have glacial fluvial deposits from Britain in the central North Sea. And then you have there's this famous Hattem beds in Holland, which it's glacial erratics. It's a so-called Menapian glaciation. So those could not have been transported fluvially all the way from Norway because the composition is from Norway. So we think the ice is, if he had not reached the Netherlands, at least it was somewhere very, very near. So this is the first big glaciation in Europe. The age of this is either stage 36 or 34. It's got this, it's between 1.2 and 1.1. It's not well constrained, but it could fit. It could fit. So we think, one, you have this pervasive climate instability going on with this stadials interstadials, which already would have placed hominid population under considerable stress. Now these populations, the carrying capacity of the landscapes probably decreased. There's probably, we don't know of use of fire at that time, low fat insulation, the archaeologists say, and paleoanthropologists. So already we have population under stress, and then comes that terminal stadial event, which should have potential implications. But okay, so how do we quantify this? So then, of course, what does one do? One turns to Axel. So to further quantify this, the impact of these events. So around that time, it was because Axel came, there's this paper in Science, where you have climate envelope modeling, which leads to in order to examine the habitat suitability. I would say no more about this. We've been hearing a lot. But what Axel very kindly agreed to help us, and Simon Parfit and Nick Ashton built a database for Southwest Asia and for Europe. They went very critically through the whole database and started throwing sites out if they didn't fit the criteria. And this criteria that Will Rebrox and co-workers have said, so you need strong evidence of humanly manufactured lithic artifacts that they are not eoliths, or sort of produced by taphonomic processes, and some kind of chronological framework at least. So the basis, you have these sites, and then so these sites are then used to train the model, if you like. So this is the habitat suitability before the terminal stadial, and you can see those sites, and purple is extremely suitable, and then it decreases as you go into the blues. And then, so I need to explain this. In blue is the sea surface temperatures from U1385. In red is the sea surface temperatures near the Portuguese margin from Axel's and his group large simulation of the last 2 million years, transient simulation, now it's 3 million years, and that's this line here, the red, which is basically run on astronomical forcing and CO2. But then, and you can see sort of not much change around that time. But because we think there's been all this meltwater coming down, then what Axel and his co-workers ran is they did a fresh hosing experiment. We've heard the word before. So you put all this fresh water between 50 degrees and 70 degrees north in the North Atlantic, creates this freshwater lid, and then what does it disturbs the AMOC, and then the amount, this is for 4,000 years that it goes. The peak is 23 meters the peak is 25.25 Svedrups, and this altogether for this 4,000 years leads to its equivalent to a sea level of 23 meters of sea ice, of ice having melted. Okay, that's pretty conservative because we think around that time was 34, 60 meters, okay? Maybe 40 at the very least. So this is a conservative estimate, and that leads to a drop of 3 degrees. You see the axes are different here and there. The reconstructed is 7 degrees. So this is a conservative experiment, okay? We didn't try to sort of go all the way. And that leads to a change in net primary productivity by 50%. So this is the terminal stadial. You can see the decrease in Iberia of NPP. And and this is before and after. And the habitat suitability drops significantly by more than 50% with this push. Okay, so then I think there is some suggestion that we can say that severity of a terminal stadial would have impacted early human occupation and would have led to the depopulation of Europe at least once. And I just wanted to, this text from the paper, and this goes back to Robin Dennell. Robin Dennell, going back to the beginning, where he said he wasn't sure that occupation was continuous in Southern Europe. He asked, when was Europe first colonized? Might be rephrased, how often was Europe uninhabited after hominins first entered? We agree with that, at least once, but we can further qualify the question by adding, and for how long was Europe? Because the way now what remains from the database is that there appears to be a hiatus between this early appearance and following stage 34. Until you get to about stage 25 or 21, I'll be more inclined to say it's actually 21. And the evidence for presence is at best 10 years. At best 10 years. So then the question becomes, if there was indeed an extirpation of the early Homo erectus, is it possible that then when they finally came back, what you have is the antecessor, because in the Grandolina you have a child's skull that has been assigned to the species of Homo antecessor, and is that Homo antecessor appears after this 900K event, and is that does this mean then that those populations were more resilient? Because once you go past stage 22, then you're in the mid-Pleistocene transition going into the 100,000 year with more intense glaciation. So were they better able to deal with that? Perhaps. I should say there's one more thing that they put in. I thought I'd run out of time, but I have 3 minutes, so I can say that. You remember I said at the beginning there's a kind of delay from Dmanisi until they appear about 1.5, 1.6, about 200,000 year delay, which may be completely an artifact. We simply haven't found the sites yet. Okay, but I mean this has been commented by other people, and we thought that maybe it's something to do with this obliquity. There's a long cycle of obliquity, a 1.2 million year cycle of obliquity, that leads to more subdued around the time between 1.8 and 1.6. And this may lead to slightly cooler interglacials. We have cooler interglacials in isotopic stages 13, 15, 17. It's again the same, is that obliquity signal. So it's one wonders whether there's something going on there that actually did, perhaps they didn't want to turn left. Conclusions, I think, well, you can read them. I'm just going to say that I think at least we can say that southern Europe would have been depopulated at least once. And that's it. Thank you very much.